Hi everyone, it's Michelle Lightworker here, and welcome to the 10th episode of the Enlightenment Activation series. This week we focus on the shadow of wholeness, which is brokenness. I spoke to 6 individuals about how they're mastering the art of reclaiming their wholeness.
Yeah, hi, it's Eric Lyleson. I'm here in Scotland on holidays. I'm a psychologist in private practice, and I also run family constellations workshops, Enneagram workshops, and meditation courses. I try to steer people away from the idea that they're bad, mad, or sick. Because if you're bad, you get locked up or punished. If you're mad, well, nowadays you get medicated or locked up, and if you're sick, you get medicated. Those are the kind of main things, and that you see that a lot in the psychology, realm, that people getting on antidepressants. I think in Australia, roughly 5% or more of the population at any given time is taking antidepressants, which is basically saying they're suffering because of their attitude and outlook on life, but we're calling that sick. Now, I'm not saying there aren't some people that aren't sick and they do need some kind of medical help, but in most cases, that's not the truth. They just need to open up and face their situation and deal with the pain in their life head on instead of trying to avoid it. Everything is exactly perfect the way it is, and it's screwed upness, you might say. The fact that we create suffering for ourselves, and people definitely create suffering for themselves, that's perfect too, because without suffering, you wouldn't get feedback that you're out of alignment with your wholeness. In fact, you can basically think of there being a formula that I like to go by that says pain times resistance equals suffering. So there is pain in life. This is one of the Buddha's great noble truths. In life there is pain. And we know that, but the amount we suffer about that pain depends on how much we resist that fight, that try to avoid those things. And of course, only egos try to avoid pain. Only fear tries to avoid pain. And so let's say we have 5 units of pain in our life. If we have 5 units of resistance, we get 25 units of suffering. That's a big wake-up call if you heed it. If you have no resistance to your pain, then you have 5 times 0 equals 0 suffering. The Enneagram is an ancient symbol that actually describes the wholeness of all living systems. It's divided up into 9 different phases. It's commonly known as 9 different personality types, but what we find in the essential wholeness approach is that the Enneagram describes a 9-phase cycle of change. Our egos, when we get attached to being a certain way or we're afraid of change, tend to resist the cycle of change that would help us feel whole and part of all living systems on Earth. And then we become identified with 1/9 of our wholeness. So the Enneagram itself can be very helpful in understanding how our ego, our fears, our beliefs, our judgments cause us to get stuck rather than embrace the wholeness of our being. I think what's really important is to remember that that's what they say in Buddhism, that we're all Buddhas whether we know it or not. So our true nature is enlightened, is wise and loving. And so the most important thing that I say to people is basically trust your common sense and your good heart, because that's what actually connects you to your Buddha nature, to your enlightened nature.
I'm Fee Hardy. I'm the owner and creator of Amara Mists. I create vibrational mists and natural perfumes. I'm 48 years old and I live on the Sunshine Coast. I've been into spirituality for a really long time, since my early 20s really, and I just, I thought I had things going along pretty well, which I did, Last year, a few things unfolded that really kind of woke me up, re-woke me up, I guess, again. It came to a crunch and I decided I needed to act. I mean, basically the universe said, this is it, you've got to deal with this stuff. So I did, and it was really, really challenging. And I remember spending the first 2 days in bed, basically sobbing and crying when I really got everything, and I just released so much stuff. And since then, I really have, I guess, worked on integrating myself on a much deeper level. I wasn't acknowledging myself. I just, I wasn't acknowledging who I am really deeply. Integration occurred when I started to be really willing to not sit with the fluff and get really deep. And even though I was willing to go deep, and I did have deep conversations with my husband and other people that I'm connected with, however, I just really chose to take it to a whole new level. Like really, really, really honoring myself in, if I felt something, because I am really intuitive. I have a lot of knowings, and I mean, we all do, right? But I really kind of denied that part of myself. And so now, if I'm feeling something or sensing something, or I need to share something with my husband or a friend or one of my sons, I do it. Or if I'm really sensing something in someone else that's close to me, I will send them a message. And I wasn't doing that. Like I doubted myself, or I wasn't acknowledging that I had that ability. You can feel like there is something wrong or there is something broken in you, and that's so not true. It's just an unintegration. It's just you're not aligned in something, or something's not aligned with you. It doesn't mean, it's like there's a recipe and you make up this beautiful recipe and you're adding all different ingredients, and then you taste it and it's not bad, but it's not as good as it could be. And so instead of thinking, this is crap, I'm throwing it away, it's, if you ask the question, what's missing here? What do I need to get that I can add into this that will make this amazing and make my taste buds dance? And so I started doing that. I started asking the question of what's missing that I need to understand here, that I need to add in, rather than think there was something wrong with me or something wrong with an experience or a situation. And it takes the judgment out. When you're asking what's missing rather than what's wrong here, whether it's with yourself, myself, the situation, or someone else, there's judgment in that. So when we take that out and ask what's missing, we can figure out, okay, it's communication, or it's nurturing, or love, or it's understanding, or it can just be anything like that. But it takes the judgment out, and so it opens up a whole world of possibilities. And we can, if we're tuned in, we can get that intuition to add in what's missing, to make it whole again, to make it zing our taste buds.
My name is Marie Bargas. I am a celebrity psychic, otherwise known as the Hollywood Witch. My age is, it's a secret. I've been working here in Los Angeles for several years. Energy and magic is not classified as dark or light, but purely and simply by intent. One of my examples for this is that the morning star, the bringer of the dawn, the Lord of Light, is Lucifer himself, who in many traditions is, he's the bad guy. And in other traditions, Kali, who is the destroyer goddess of worlds, often pictured as a very dark goddess, is actually a liberator of souls. Now, here in the United States, The juxtaposition between dark and light can be very confusing for many people. And what I try to do is I try to help reconcile the opposites by pointing out that intent and intent alone is the definition of the kind of magic that somebody is practicing. One of the things that I'm famous for is talking about manifestation in simple formula. Now, in the United States, in Woo speak or Metaphysler speak, there is a movement towards transformation alchemically, or turning pain into power. That is not a new idea. It's actually based on some very ancient and classical texts. One of them is the Kabbalion, and the other one would be the Emerald Tablet by Hermes Trithemius. It combines basic principles of science that we accept today that are very simple, and that is polarity is necessary for manifestation. One of the things that I am famous for is reconciling opposites within magical formula. I try to simplify magic through a course that I've created called Magic Lab Academy that incorporates using the cycles of destruction, preservation, and creation in order to make manifestation happen.
I just wanted to reiterate, psychic ability, clairaudience, clairvoyance, psychometry, mediumship, etc. These are all byproducts of natural human evolution. They don't have anything to do with being of the devil. They are in no way, shape, or form satanic. As a species, we had to evolve in order to be able to stand upright, hence the term Homo erectus. We also evolved and were able to speak, but that wasn't something that we were born with initially when our species began. No, these were all things that are mutations that eventually became dominant traits in the process of evolution. They have nothing to do with spirituality, which was created by human beings, but purely through nature. You know, I don't think we need to be persecuted or should be persecuted because we have these traits that are recessive now, but will eventually become dominant. We have an entire generation of children that we call indigo children that are more psychically gifted than the generations beforehand. What are we going to do with them? You know, what kind of negative programming are we going to give them? Are we going to make them ashamed of who they are? All of these things that we try to demonize because of whatever beliefs we may have or may not have are just a byproduct of evolution. I particularly like the X-Men because they teach that lesson very well. Imagine psychics, clairvoyants, mystics, psychometrists. We're X-Men. We are the real X-Men.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Nassis, and I reside in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. And I am a first responder. I've been one for 17 years. I'm also a meditation facilitator, as well as a trauma-sensitive yoga instructor. I investigated traffic fatalities for many years as part of my job, and seeing people, dead bodies day after day for many, many years. And after a while, there's that desensitization. But I think with a lot of people, when they endure so much stress and they see so many things, there's also a desensitization with them as well. One component that really helped me, because I essentially had a lack of emotion. So meditation really helped with that, and yoga really helped with that. And that's that body, mind, breath, and bringing myself back into my own physical body, living in the moment, and combining that breath, body movement really helped me to stay focused in this from moment to moment. There's something called secondary trauma and vicarious trauma, and that is not just exclusive to first responders. Nurses can suffer from that, counselors and therapists and healers. Hearing about other people's trauma, you can actually have or get something that's called secondary trauma. Just by hearing and listening and seeing other people's trauma day in and day out. And that's a new thing that's, much more common with people suffering. So it's not necessarily them going through the trauma, it's seeing everybody else's trauma. They end up, it's almost like an empathic thing where you take on that, but how are you dealing with it? We have to deal with that as well. So we have to cope with, if we are suffering from secondary trauma or vicarious trauma where, I'll give you an example. I've altered my life based on stuff that I've seen. I've seen so many people get robbed where, I'm always looking both ways across the street at night, making sure that there's no one hiding behind cars. So that's something that would be vicarious trauma, where I've developed and changed the way I do things in life based on the trauma that I've seen in other people. I saw somebody die, I would think, oh my God, how sad is that? But a lot of things were out of my hands, and I couldn't explain why a 5-year-old had to die, and there was a lot of times where I thought, the world's very cruel. But I also, to not make it my own personal issue or take stuff home like that, I had to really trust that there was a higher power or a higher God. And there's a reason for all of this to happen. And there's so many things I couldn't explain, but I also didn't want to hold that emotional aspect of it, of being angry and bitter, because it was detrimental to my own health. I think in order for people to reach that level of wholeness, they have to identify different traumas that they've experienced in their lifetime. And trauma helps you grow in so many levels, and it helps us to become stronger physically and emotionally. And I think with my own personal life, that it's made me so much stronger on so many levels. In regards to brokenness, it's a temporary feeling, okay? And if you think about brokenness and you look at every time that you've fallen, most people focus on the brokenness and being a victim, and I've fallen here and I fell here, but we've gotten up each time. We never focus on how many times we've gotten up after we have fallen, and that's what we need to do. Contrast and having that diversion in life makes you stronger, it makes you smarter, it makes you well-versed, it creates that wholeness with you. Can you imagine if none of us went through anything and we all looked the same and we all did the same thing? Then what would be the purpose of life? I think having that spiritual ascension is what fine-tunes our personality, and whatever life experiences that we have also helps us to help other people. We can be the beacon for other people to be drawn to us. Brokenness is actually that step to dust off our knees and to start that next climb, that next ladder, that next step. And it's the stepping stone to having that enlightenment, that activation, and that wholeness.
Hi, this is Linda Willow Roberts. I'm 52. I live in Tasmania at the moment. I'm a world traveller, psychic, a clairvoyant, a theta healer, a Reiki master, certified medium, and an angel intuitive, and an author of I'm a Manifestor Magical Oracle cards. I love travelling and I love going to new places, and I actually thought that it was about me. We went to Roslyn Chapel, which is just south of Edinburgh, and as a spiritual person, your spiritual GPS is on all the time. And the car pulled up, we pulled up in the car park, and I opened the door and I put one foot out on the bitumen, and tears just streamed down my face because I could feel the love from that area, and there was some healing that needed to be done also from that area. And so while I'm at these spiritual places trying to, upgrade my knowledge and see new things, and you get this feeling, if you really tap into the energy and the area that you're in, of things that need to be balanced and healed in that area and the earth. I went to Egypt, and we were able to have some one-on-one time with the only living Sekhmet statue at Karnak, And I went in and yes, I asked for things for myself, but I asked for humanity, because I'm actually very, very lucky that I get to go to these places. And part of being grateful and part of traveling to these wonderful places around the world means that you can anchor the energy, that you can help heal people, that you can heal the earth and all the past life stuff that was there, you know, and the karma that's attached to it. And so I get to do that on my way, and that's that makes me feel very humble. And I try really hard not to come back to I'm just a 5'2" woman from Tasmania, because it is way bigger than me. I traveled for 6.5 weeks. I come home and it's like I'm feeling so displaced. I felt like, why am I here? I felt like, you know, I belonged in England. That is where my ancestors are from. I actually went to the particular place that the first ancestor was sent to, Van Diemen's Land, from England, and it was Reigate. And that was just amazing in itself, the synchronicities and the signs and things that happen around that. But I came back and I felt displaced. And so you have to let the dust settle and just, you know, anchor, go back to your sacred place, and sort of do your work, your inner work, to try and let it all settle. Because I thought I'd come back and I'd hit the ground running, but my body and my spirit life, my mind, body and soul wasn't as one. It needed to all catch up to one another. We were coming back from the London Tower and we were doing the cruise up the Thames, and we got to the bridge near Big Ben. And as we were getting closer, I just felt this feeling in my gut. And I said, when we get off this boat, can we not stand at this corner of the bridge? I got them moving as quickly as I could, and we went and stood near a bus stop and some poles and stuff, and I pushed one of my friends behind a pole and I went, you get to stand there. And I was in protection mode. I just wanted them to be okay. And we looked up, and here's these 6 police cars, a police on a horse, and a policeman with a dog. Now, one of the people that was with me said, you couldn't have seen that from the boat. And I said, no, I didn't. But it's when you're in that situation and you have those feelings and those gut feelings when you're traveling, you have to listen to them. You still send love. You still try and think peaceful thoughts. But, you know, you have to trust your gut feelings. Spirit doesn't give you a spiritual GPS for no reason.
Hi, I'm Helena Ryan. I'm 37 years old. I live in Brisbane, Queensland, and I'm an ancestral clearer and spiritual mentor. Ancestral healing and clearing actually clears beliefs, patterns, and behaviours from the generations. So I work 7 generations back. So we go through and we clear out and identify the patterns and beliefs, but we also take it 7 generations forward so that our great-great-grandchildren are released from these patterns. There was this time a few years ago when I could not shake this abundance block. I'd have clients cancel and I'd feel like tomorrow I'm going to starve. And it was ridiculous. There was nothing in my physical life that met that. And then a few years later, I accidentally channeled through and cleared my ancestral lineage, and I found myself in my father's mother's quarter. And I knew that my grandmother had married an Australian soldier to get out of England to find a better life for herself. And I never understood it because my grandfather was quite violent and abusive. And we used to think, you know, what was so bad in England that Granny married Granddad? But when I was channeling through that line and I started to look into what the experiences of my English side were, I really got to see that as we went further back through the lines, was that they really were so poor that they were starving, that they sometimes had to decide which child got to eat a meal that night. And that's when it really dawned on me that what I was feeling, it wasn't even mine. And no wonder I could not clear it by looking through my own stuff. imagine an onion, and one whole layer of the onion is the ancestral realm. It's all of the beliefs and patterns that have been passed down the DNA. And so when you peel off that whole layer of the onion, the next layer is exposed. And what I discovered when I cleared my own ancestral lineage is that I came to really get clear on who I am. I became more decisive. Even though I was already a decisive person, I actually really got what was mine, who I was, because I didn't have all of the baggage from my ancestral realm. Every trait has a shadow and a light side. You know, there's a strong stubbornness running through my family line, and it has a really healthy aspect to it, but then it also has an unhealthy aspect to it. So ancestral work is really about acknowledging that there's no good or bad. Our ancestors have only ever done the best they could with what they have, like us today. It's balancing out the light and the shadow aspects of each trait so that you can experience more of who you are in a way that serves your soul purpose, your higher purpose, that takes you to, you know, your highest and best self. Not just about resolving trauma and clearing out beliefs and patterns from the DNA. There are so many gifts we haven't connected with, and one of them that comes strongly through that when we haven't been allowed to fully connect with is our intuition. And, you know, that shows up in so many ways. Our previous generations, there's been a lot of fear around it. That's come through organized religion. That's even, you know, going back to the witch hunts, that women were persecuted for their intuitive-based gifts. So there has been generation after generation of gifts that have been shut down. What actually prompted this work was my son. And it wasn't as if I looked at him and went, oh, wow, you know, there's a whole stack of stuff coming through the family line I don't want him to have. I actually really believe after a few years of doing this that the new wave of children, the future of our, you know, of our society, of our culture, is actually calling us to clear our ancestral line. These children are so different. They're born with no fear. They're born on purpose. And I really feel when I look at my son that he's called this in because he can't step forward and fulfill his purpose with an old set of belief systems through our family line. And I really, really see that in a lot of women that I'm working with, is that it's their children who are calling this in to clean this up so that the consciousness of the planet, the vibration of the planet, can actually rise.
So, what do you think? Wholeness to me is not a remedy to brokenness. Brokenness is merely an illusion. We are already whole. We may well be reclaiming our gifts, perhaps those that we've denied ourselves or that have been a byproduct of our ancestry line being unhealed or trauma being denied. But it's our responsibility to step into and reclaim our wholeness, to balance our personality, to take that step and to explore the various parts of ourselves that perhaps are buried, are hidden from our view right now. When we do that, we can travel, we can go out into the world, share those gifts, tune into perhaps secrets and mysteries that may be hidden from other people's view. Listen to the warning signs because we're clearer in ourselves of who we are on a whole level. So I hope this helps you to move forward in your life with more hope, more belief, more faith that you are indeed whole, that you were never broken, that nothing can ever break you, and that it's your birthright to live a life of joy and wholeness.